It's a report of sorts, having seen the headlines, particularly what transpired yesterday in Yobe State, where the military said they repelled a planned attack by Boko Haram insurgents. Let's get an assessment, a feel of what is playing out at the moment. Let's head to Abuja. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us in the studio this morning Mr. Ayuba John Bassa, who is a national coordinator of Gwoza Christian Community, the GCCA, and he's also an architect. You're welcome to Sunrise City this morning.
Thank you. And thank you, viewers.
Yes, so let us ask you. I mean, you're from Gwoza. I do not know when last you were there. You know, perhaps recently, perhaps later on. But I know that you have been in Borno State very, very recently, as recent as last week. Can you give us a feel of how the people, from speaking to your relatives, your community, your associations, what feel do they have of the war against terror as we speak today?
The feeling is generally like, can I say, living within a football court. Anything outside that football court is a danger. So within Gwoza town, you feel you are free. For now, especially these 2 months, there wasn't any direct attack from the mountain to Gwoza town like they normally do, maybe, you know, but the only attack is for those living at the outskirts side of the town, and also if you venture into your farm, you also are in danger. I think these are the pots of attacks that is just disturbing the community for now. But within the town, one town, this Gwoza, and the next town is within Limankara and within Pulka, I think you can live your life normally. Yes.
So how are the people there surviving? I mean, what sort of business? Because usually we know that people in rural areas, their businesses are usually around maybe some trading, farming mostly, and also perhaps fishing if they're close to the lake. Can you give us a sense of how they're managing to eke a living?
No, there's no farming for now because of the risk involved, since you cannot move for more than a kilometer. But the business within the community has to do with the little commodities and aids from the aid donors. And then some people might decide to do away with little out of what they are given to go and sell or trade by barter to be able to get other things. That's how life is. And those that are staying within the camp, they are on. There's not any business apart from relying solely on aid.
We know that there has, before now, there were attempts to try and decongest the camps. Not just decongest it, but also to say that some areas are relatively safe. The Nigerian army has been able to secure those areas, and they need the people to go back and occupy those areas. I think Gwoza town was one of them, because before now we couldn't even go to Gwoza. That was a no-no. But Gwoza town has, has now been liberated. You say it is relatively safe within the town, but anywhere outside is a danger. Have there been any steps since you last visited to try and ensure that people feel a little safe on the outskirts of Gwoza or within the farms and the smaller villages that are around Gwoza? Have you seen any steps being taken by the military or security forces to ensure that people feel safer going about their businesses outside of Gwoza?
I can say no. Even though last week we had some kind of good news. There's this town called Koranabasa. It's my maternal home, and a Boko Haram dead body was found. So I think he may be killed by military. That's what we are hoping, because no human can go and and hunt such terrorists. So it was a kind of good news that soldiers have started reaching out to these people. Otherwise, they were not reaching them. That's the biggest problem we've been facing. But for now, Gwoza itself is jam-packed. It's full to the brim. In fact, some people's toilet has been converted to bedroom. You can imagine that. Those pit toilet, they will cover it, block it. There's no more a toilet. They will have to go somewhere and dig a pit for a new toilet. To that extent. And then most of the people staying in Gwoza are not actually the owners of those houses. Because when the owners have been chased out, the little people that do come here and then, and the other small villages around, who rushed into Gwoza, and there was a little security done where they were, occupied those houses. So if I go now to my father's house, I don't have a place to stay. I can't just chase out people again to leave my house. And government did not build any house for anybody. Yes.
So that is a very worrisome situation.
That is.
So because people were relocating, they just came back to any house that they found that was open.
Of course.
And they took it over.
Of course.
Do you think that there's any hope that those who were the original owners of those houses will be able to lay claim to what was theirs?
Maybe in the future, by the time the other towns have been cleared and people go back to their towns and villages, those houses will now be okay for us to go and occupy.
There was some reconstruction efforts going on in some parts of the towns where there was some reclamation. Where Gwoza wasn't one of them?
No, during the former governor,
yes,
there is some section of Gwoza whose houses, those houses have been renovated for owners to lay claim. But in the process of doing that, corruption overtook that project completely. A block will be piled up today. Before the next morning, all the blocks and cement and all the building material will be stolen.
Will be stolen?
Yes, by the residents. He tried doing that. He has to sack the whole, what do you call, committee on that project, because they too, they do sell the materials whatsoever. I don't know, that project couldn't continue because after that section is called Gwoza Wakani, the other areas couldn't get that development. When he wanted to expand with the development, the more they pile material, the next day you won't find anything. And when you go to the market, you see people selling iron rods, selling cement, and the rest. That project couldn't move. So, like my area, no single house has been touched. You know.
Okay, I'm trying to get an idea.
Yeah.
Because we saw some pictures on television of houses being constructed, some of them being rebuilt, some of them being built from scratch. In some instances, total estates were built. We even saw some handover projects, some handover ceremonies. There was complaints that it was women that were being empowered, because I think in some instances it was women that were given the keys to the houses, because there were fears that if it was a man that was given the house, you know, the chances that he would go and marry more wives or maybe chase his old wives away could be a problem. We don't know how it panned out, but can you tell us specifically what areas that you know of benefited from this project?
Yeah, it's Borno Central and Borno North Senatorial District. Gwoza, the former governor flagged off 500 units of houses in Goshe, but up to now that project couldn't, I don't know what stops it. But nothing is moving there because you cannot stay, you can't live in Goshe. And now the insurgencies are still there. So I don't know, that project is still at a standstill, as far as I know for now. But issue of Gwoza might not really be the housing problem. What Gwoza man needs is simple, clear of those areas.
Which areas?
The other 49 towns and about 60 small villages Once you are able to clear that place, Gwoza people will rush back to their place, occupy their former houses, and you see people building, they will build it. For example, we have a lot of community of Gwoza people in Nasarawa. If you go to Mararaba here and then just Nasarawa here, these same Gwoza people who came establish beans farm, beans market, with trailers. You see trailers loading so many beans to either Lagos or Ibadan. This is their hard work, and then they purchase so many lands, build houses, more than 2,000 houses by themselves. What Gwoza man hates is for somebody to spoon feed him. We believe we have the ability to make things on our own. We hate begging. We hate waiting for somebody to come and help us and feed us. That's the mentality in a typical Gwoza person.
Let me quickly introduce our next guest now, who's just joined us, Dr. Dan Moore. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have served as Dr. Dan Moore has served as a special advisor, national security affairs to the national security advisors in the presidency under 3 consecutive Nigerian governments, and also served as director Nigerian Air Force and director Human Resources Ministry of Defense. You're welcome again to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Just quickly, give us a sense of where we are in this battle against insurgency. We're taking the testimony of Mr. Yuba John Bassa, who is an indigenous of Gwoza and has cause to frequently visit Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. And it would seem that right now progress seems to have stalled somewhat. Yes, we've made major gains in the past, but it looks like we've rested somewhat on our oars. We haven't quite made much progress since we started reclaiming major towns and cities. After that, it would seem that we have left the little villages and towns, just as he's talking about. Is that where we are? Is that the target for the battle against insurgency?
Yes, to some extent, yes. You know, when President Buhari came initially in 2015, 2016, he did pretty well. I was able to recover some of the local governments and the towns that had been taken over. And then in late 2017, you realize that the things started to be reversed. Surprisingly, we don't know why. Part of it maybe had to do with the withdrawal of the Joint Task Force. You know, there was a multinational Joint Task Force. I don't know why, but the multinational Joint Task Force seems to have disappeared. It looks like the other, that came from different countries, such as Cameroon, Niger, Chad, and all that, went back to their countries. And as soon as that happened, you realize that, with 2018, 2019, we've been seeing an escalation, or even the retakeover of some of the villages and towns, and some of the local governments are even half or almost 100% taken over by now. So it would appear that the withdrawal of the Joint Task Force or the disbandment of the Joint Task Force, I don't know under what arrangement. But the important thing is that it's surprising that of all the countries that were suffering from insurgencies, it seems to be only Nigeria that has not experienced a decline. Because a lot of other countries, if we go now to Niger, the situation is much better than it has ever been. If we go to Cameroon, it's the same thing. To Chad, it's the same thing. But in Nigeria, the situation has become terribly bad. When in 2015, 2016, they had actually withdrawn to the Zambisa forest.
And we even saw videos of the Nigerian Air Force trying to clear out Zambisa forest. So 1 minute we hear that, they're bombarding Zambisa forest. They were even showing us videos of man-hours completed flying around Zambisa forest, taking journalists to see the work that they were doing, taking activists to also see the work that they were doing. But it would seem, as you pointed out, that we haven't seen that in a while. What could be hampering or what could be causing this decline that we're seeing? Even though I know that very strongly the military will say this is not a decline, perhaps it's some misconception that if major towns have been taken, we might not be hearing of them taking towns every day. But from what you can see, I mean, for you and from his testimony, it would seem that after major progress was made, there's not been much more. What would you say we can attribute to why we're not hearing more positive news or more victory songs in the media?
Well, I've mentioned the first point already. It has to do with the International Joint Task Force. The withdrawal of that has created a lot of problems. And then secondly, it also has to do with the fact that the bombing of the Zambeza forest was from the air. You know, to have been able to take over the insurgencies in those areas, you needed, after having bombed the Zambeza forest, for troops to go in on land. And that never happened. It was in those circumstances that they regrouped. But then beyond that, you realize that there have been also some international assistance that they never enjoyed before. You realize, for instance, that now many of them are affiliated with international, terrorist agencies. For instance, the one that now calls itself, the one headed by Abu the Dambani, now they are calling themselves the
ISWAP?
West Africa, yes, SWAP. And then you realize that they are now in a league with ISIS. And so they are getting better equipment and better things, and they have rearmed themselves. You also realize that even the original Boko Haram, headed by Abubakar Sakau, is also being supported now by a lot of other terrorist, foreign terrorist organizations. So the issue is that you even look at our soldiers and compare with the terrorists themselves. The nature of weapons the terrorists are carrying are of high caliber than our soldiers are carrying. And that is very demoralizing. Imagine you are going to battle and you are representing government, and yet your weapon is inferior to the ones the terrorists are, So if you ask me for the reasons why it seems to have been a decline in the performance or in the takeover or restoration of those areas, I will tell you that it has to do, one, with the fact that the International Joint Task Force is no longer active. Two, it has to do with the fact that we need to give them better equipment. Our soldiers and our men, officers and men, better equipment. They cannot be going to battle with lesser equipment than terrorists. In fact, we should, as a government, we should be able to arm our own soldiers much better than the terrorists. And then the fact that they have gotten international assistance, it looks like they are there, And not only that, you see that they have now successfully raided the police stations and our own military barracks in those places. And they have taken a lot of weapons, even from us.
Okay, we're seeing some visuals there. I think this is courtesy of the Nigerian Air Force, of the bombardment that usually takes place in some areas. In some, I think, for the last couple of weeks or so, almost once every week, we'll hear one story from the Nigerian Air Force saying that they were able to foil the meeting place of where alleged Boko Haram terrorists were meeting in some areas. And oftentimes they send these visuals. So that's what we're seeing here this morning on the TV. But two questions quickly come to mind. I'm wondering, one, how is it possible that Boko Haram terrorists are able to quickly regroup? Because one would have thought that if the group is being decimated on a daily basis, their numbers should be reducing. Does it mean then that there is a higher incentive for people to keep joining Boko Haram? Or is it that somehow they miss, maybe we miss our targets and these people go and hide somewhere, and after a while they come back and they regroup? What precisely is happening? Their numbers cannot be stagnant, can it?
No. You see, each part of the biggest problem has to do with the strategy we are using, the kind of security architecture that is being used there. There are basically three types of them. You have the segmentary approach, which our soldiers are using now. In the segmentary approach, there is no coordination between the various units. That is why you could see what happened in Dapchi, whereby they were blaming themselves. But you see, to be able to do something like this and be able to have total control of the situation, all the command units must be coordinated at least. So you have the coordinated approach, but what is really needed is an integrated approach. You will realize that every time they are going for operations, they will ask the police to withdraw. Even the special terrorist squads of the police. Then they will ask the civilian, joint task forces to withdraw. It shouldn't be like that. To be able to have you have to have an integrated, comprehensive approach, whereby you locate areas of the other. If the police are to handle this area, then you go to another area. All of these are taking place at the same time. But you realize that because of the segmented nature, there is no proper coordination, there is no proper integration, so the effect has been much less. And besides, you realize that the problems are also continual because they have noticed now that they are even defeating, taking over our own barracks, especially the front unit ones, taking over the police barracks. It has given them more incentive to do more. When in battle, as long as you are able to take over territories and then to capture more weapons from from the other side, it gives you more motivation. So you realize that they have become far more motivated now than our Nigerian soldiers.
That is
which
very
shouldn't be the case.
worrisome. Quickly, one whose job is it to coordinate this? Because you've talked about the segmented nature of the efforts being made to fight the terrorists. Whose job is it to coordinate them? One would have thought that all of this will be warehoused within, say, the Ministry of Defense, but it doesn't look like the Ministry of Defense is the one in charge of coordinating the three sections of the military.
Traditionally, it should have been the office of the Chief of Defense Staff. But you see, in a modern system, we are operating a presidential system. The coordinating office usually is the Office of the National Security Advisor. That is where the policies are formulated before they go into the battlefront. But what is happening is that because it's through the Office of the National Security Advisor that all the security agencies, all the different arms of the armed forces, and including even the Chief of Defense Staff and his people coordinate. But there seems to be it's the nature of the approach they are adapting. I have been special advisor in that office under 3 different regimes. I remember that we had fought Maitaseni before. And it did not take us more than 3 months. And you see how Bataseni was spreading. So what happened was that we had even more people. You can't coordinate this kind of operation when there are no deputy national security advisors, when you have only the NSA and his special advisor. It's not possible. I was special advisor. I had worked under Alhaji Gambo when he was NSA. I also worked under General Ali Muhammad. I worked under Gwoza. What we did, when such issues arose, we made the requisition and Babangida approved, even under Abacha. So there were 3 deputy national security advisors. There was a permanent secretary of national security. There was myself, a special advisor on national security. But if you go to that office now, I don't know what is the problem. There are no deputies. So it's very difficult to coordinate. The NSA alone cannot do much.
Well, there are huge questions. Well, let's leave that one alone. I want to also know very quickly, how come is it that these people are still getting their arms and ammunition? You talked about them having more sophisticated weapons.
That's right.
We see that there is an attempt. Every time we have checkpoints along the roads, the EFCC is there, immigration is there. EFCC checks people who are carrying cash in excess of 1 million naira. I think you have to explain where you got that from. Yes. How is it that these people are still getting funding, taking care of themselves, food and water, and even arms, even though they are in the mountains? How is it that we're not able to stop the source of their weapons?
In the last 3 months or so, the border situation has been a little bit under control. Otherwise, you realize that our borders had been very porous. You go to the northern part of Nigeria, you can literally walk with weapons or drive jeep anywhere and come into it. So the borders were porous. But now with the customs now moving to the border, trying to to close the border, it has helped. So you realize that they're no longer getting that kind of equipment that they used to get before. But you see, because they have taken over some of our barracks, our military barracks, because they have taken over the police, some of the equipment we had were also taken over. So you realize that we really need one, we do not have monitoring equipment. You have to have better satellite in a modern warfare. When if you don't have enough satellite, then you have to have a lot of manpower. But realize that the whole Nigerian military has only about 160,000 active force. Out of this 160,000 active force, they have operations in almost 32 states of the Federation. So they have divided their manpower, they have divided their equipment and resources and armament in all the 32 states of the Federation. In fact, if we talk of the joint one they are doing together with the police, they are in every state of the Federation. You know, you cannot disappear the energy. How many officers and men do we have? The total is only about 160,000. So if they have to be fighting certain battles in every state of the Federation, and then they have a major battle to fight with Boko Haram, and then, you know, it's a big problem. So the spread, you know, there are some of these things that could have been handled by the police.
Yeah, he talked about some gains, Mr. John Bassa. You heard him talk about the fact that border closure has helped somewhat in terms of streaming of arms. Are you confident that this war will come to an end anytime soon?
As far as I'm concerned, for the past, this is the third year now, only one Boko Haram has been killed, and that was last week in Gwoza. And we are certain that we know the boy.
What do you want? What are you asking for now? Now that, you know, people are listening, perhaps some government officials are also listening. As an indigene of Borno State, what are you asking? What are you looking for?
What I'm looking for is for the government to give that highest political will. I see an example of El-Rufai with Obasanjo, giving him enough power to demolish the big men's houses, so-called, that deviated the Abuja master plan. You know, that's the kind of political will I would have preferred the government to give either the security advisor or the Minister of Defense. Give them enough power. Please face this thing. We are ready. But if the whole Gwoza Mandara mountain is full of these people. I have a relation who just came 2 months ago from the mountain. Why did he run? They went to another area called Ngoshe Sama, adopted 2 people, brought them to that place, and where they normally have their Jumat prayers. It's called Drime, there on the mountain. They now gave those people 7 days. You either change or we kill you. They live 7 days without eating. On that Friday, they now say, you either turn or we kill you. They say, no, we will not turn. They slaughter all of them. That Baba was screaming, because he's elderly. They respected him and allowed him. The next day, he fled through the bush and come back to Abuja. So they are there. They are doing their operations safe on the mountain.
It's a problem.
And the whole Gwoza boundary is porous enough. You can go to Cameroon any day, any time, and come back.
Mr. John Bassa, we really have to go. We feel your pain, and we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts this morning. Dr. Dan Moore, also thank you so much for giving us insights into where we are in terms of this battle and what the problem, as you see it, is with the battle right now. Dr. Dan Moore is Special Advisor, was Special Advisor, National Security Affairs to National Security Advisors in the Presidency under 3 consecutive Nigerian governments. And Mr. Ayuba John Bassa is a National Coordinator, Gwoza Christian Community, and is also an architect. Our Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.